안녕하세요. 목소리로 처음 인사드리는 하트 불스푼입니다. 저는 통번역대학원을 졸업하고 17년째 국제부 기자로 활동 중인 워킹맘입니다. 호주에서 가정을 이루고 산 지가 10년이 넘었고요. 지금은 두 아이를 키우면서 그 아이들의 눈높이로 세상을 보는 법을 함께 배우고 있습니다. 매일매일 글로벌 리더들의 말과 글을 통해서 세상을 읽는 게 제 업무인데요. 문장 하나하나를 깊게 들여다보는 게 제 일이다 보니 단어의 뜻보다 더 중요한 그들의 태도와 가치관이 보이더라고요. 언어 이면에 담긴 진짜 의미와 우리 성장에 힘이 되는 인사이트들을 여러분들과 함께 나눠보려고 합니다. 영어를 통해 넓은 세상을 꿈꾸고 성장하려는 분들을 위한 채널 하트 불스푼입니다. 그럼 오늘 준비한 영상 이야기를 한번 해볼게요. 여러분은 스스로를 얼마나 쓸모있는 존재라고 느끼시나요? 요즘 해외 뉴스든 팟캐스트든 다양한 소식들을 접하다 보면 AI가 세상을 다 바꿀 것 같고 앞으로는 내가 설 자리는 점차 사라질 것 같은 불안감 느끼시지 않나요? 저는 물론이고 우리 아이들은 과연 이 변화할 앞으로의 세상에서 얼마나 쓸모있는 사람이 될까? 이 물음표가 떠나지 않는 요즘입니다. 오늘 가져온 영상이 바로 그 쓸모에 관한 이야기인데요. 영상에 나오는 분은 제니퍼 월리스라는 작가입니다. 이분이 오프라 윈프리 쇼에 나와서 자기 책 매터링에 대해서 얘기하는 장면이에요. 여러분, 매터 하면 보통 문제나 물질 이런 뜻 먼저 떠오르시죠? 동사로 쓰이면 중요하다라는 뜻이 되고요. 보통 그래 그거 중요해 할 때 it matters 이렇게 얘기하거나 그거 안 중요해 상관없어 할 때 it doesn't matter 이렇게도 많이 쓰잖아요. 그러면 책에서 말하는 이 mattering 이건 어떤 뜻일까요? 이 mattering은 단순히 중요함을 넘어서서 심리학적으로는 내가 이 세상에 쓸모있고 의미 있는 존재라고 느끼는 것을 뜻한다고 해요. 저자는 요즘 사람들이 이 매터링이 텅 비어있다고 이야기합니다. 일단 오프라와 저자가 무슨 이야기를 나누는지 영상을 짧게 한번 보실게요.
I've been thinking as I was writing this book, I was thinking about the theologian Henry Nouwen, who talks about the three great lies of our society. I am what I have. I am what I do. I am what people say and think about me. That is the opposite of mattering. That is the belief that I do not matter. My mattering is contingent. It is contingent on my house. It's contingent on the number of followers I have. It's contingent on the sneakers I'm wearing. It's contingent on all these other things.
It's contingent on how people see me. It's how they see me, their perception of who I am, instead of working on what you really are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know this before researching the book, but our values, what we value, impacts our well-being. So when, researchers who study it say all of us all over the world have these same core values inside of us. And researchers separate them out into extrinsic values and intrinsic values. Extrinsic values are things like wanting the big house, wanting the high status career.
That's right. The car, the things that label you.
Popularity,
Yes.
a certain image. Those are extrinsic values. Intrinsic values are things like wanting to be good to the environment, wanting to be pro-social, wanting to grow spiritually, wanting to be a good neighbor. Values operate like a zero-sum game. So the more time and energy you spend pursuing these extrinsic values, the less room you have in your life for pursuing intrinsic ones. And here's why this matters. Because extrinsic values are linked with negative mental health and substance abuse disorder, whereas intrinsic values are linked with the well-being we want. And here, it's not that we in America have bad values. It's that our extrinsic values are constantly being activated. On social media, in the wider media, we are hearing these messages day in and day out in our hyper-capitalistic culture that you need these things to matter. Whereas people who live their lives and organize their lives through intrinsic values are what they are doing is they are more likely living a life of mattering, living a life where they feel valued by their people and where they know that they add meaningful value back.
When you don't feel like you matter, it means you can do anything to harm yourself and do anything to harm other people. Agree, Jenny?
I totally agree. You will go to great lengths to prove that you matter.
That you do matter.
When I think about political extremes, I think about road rage, I think about shootings,
Yes.
I think about online attacks. These are people who are desperately saying, oh, I don't matter, I'll show you I matter. They'll even act out against themselves. There was a study that I write about of suicidal men, and the two words they used to describe their pain was useless and worthless.
Yes.
So when we feel like we don't matter, we can turn against ourselves or we can turn against each other.
여기서 잠깐 끊어볼게요. 저자가 강조하는 핵심은 결국 존재 가치, 즉 나의 쓸모를 어디에 두느냐인데요. 이 대목에서 아주 중요한 단어가 하나 등장합니다. 바로 contingent란 단어예요. contingent의 사전적인 의미는 뭐뭐에 달려있다라는 뜻인데요. 보통 뭐뭐에 달려있다라고 하면 depend on을 떠올리죠. 근데 이 contingent on은 훨씬 더 강력한 뜻을 담고 있어요. depend on하고 contingent를 쉽게 비교해 보자면 depend on은 비가 오면 기분이 좀 처지네 이 정도의 느낌입니다. 비가 오든지 안 오든지 나라는 존재는 그대로 있죠. 그냥 기분만 바뀔 뿐이에요. 하지만 contingent는 좀 다릅니다. 그 조건이 없으면 결과 자체가 존재할 수 없는 상태를 뜻하거든요. 그럼 왜 작가는 이 무거운 단어를 썼을까요? 여러분께 질문 하나 던져볼게요. 만약 우리의 가치가 외적인 조건, 예를 들어서 우리가 살고 있는 집, 아니면 SNS 팔로워 수, 또 내가 든 가방의 브랜드, 이런 것들에 컨팅전트 하다면, 그런 것들에 달려있다면 어떻게 될까요? 혹은 내 존재가 타인의 칭찬이나 인정에 좌지우지 된다면 어떻게 될까요? 그 조건이 사라지는 순간 내 존재 이유마저 증발해버리는 거죠. 그러니까 남들이 나를 어떻게 보는가에 내 존재의 온오프 스위치를 저당 잡힌 삶이 되는 겁니다. 내가 나를 증명하는 게 아니라 내 주변의 조건들이 나를 겨우겨우 지탱해주고 있는 위태로운 상태인 거죠. 하지만 반대로 내 존재감이, 내 쓸모가 내적 기준이나 혹은 나 스스로에 대한 확신에 달려있다면 어떨까요? 외부 조건과 상관없이 나는 여전히 필요한 존재로서 의미를 지킬 수 있겠죠. 결국 핵심이 여기에 있습니다. 우리의 mattering, 즉 존재 가치를 어디에 두느냐에 따라 삶의 안정감이나 행복 또는 웰비잉이 완전히 달라진다는 거예요. 그래서 작가는 contingent라는 단어를 통해 이렇게 묻는 겁니다. 당신의 존재감, 당신의 쓸모는 어디에 달려있냐고요. 여러분의 쓸모를 좌우하는 가치는 어떤 것들인가요? 다음에 이어서 볼 영상에는 매트링 책에서도 소개된 르안이라는 청년의 이야기인데요. 이 친구 스토리는 저에게 좀 많은 생각을 하게 했습니다. 일단 함께 보실게요.
Also in the book, you share this remarkable story about Ruhan. I love that story. Can you share it briefly before we meet him?
Oh my gosh, he's remarkable. We could do a whole hour on him. So as a young child, his family struggled. He struggled with food insecurity. When he graduated high school, he became a sanitation worker, felt very proud to be serving his city that way, but also felt invisible in that uniform. He had people in his life from the very beginning who invested in him. His coworkers invested and pushed him to live out his dream, which was to go to college. He went to college. He didn't just go to college. He went all the way to Harvard Law School. His story's remarkable.
Okay, so Ruhan is joining us from New York. Hi, Ruhan.
How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
So glad
good to
meet
see you.
Likewise, likewise.
So we want to know, I'm so fascinated by the story Jenny tells in Mattering about your taking on the job as a sanitation worker. And what struck me is that moment where you and a couple of other of your coworkers were painting a dumpster, I think, right? You're painting a
Yep.
dumpster. Tell us about that moment.
I'll never forget that. Actually, I remember that I was at a different yard that day on Polk Street in Washington D.C. I was barely ever at that yard. On this given day, a lot of people were walking by us, but there was a mother walking with her son.
How old
And I
was the
remember
son? I was trying to picture how.
he had to have been somewhere between the ages of like 7 and 9, maybe
Okay,
10
okay,
at the
okay.
oldest. But I remember she like bent down towards him and like pointed at us. But she tried to whisper, but she just wasn't that good at whispering. But she said, don't be like them. And at this time, I was working a full-time job, there while also being in school full-time. And it was just interesting where I just remember I was really trying my best at this point because my father had just suffered a stroke. And I just remember like that was just very demoralizing. Like I'll never forget that day, like ever.
When the mother is walking by with her son and she points to you and your fellow coworkers and says, "Don't be like them." But you know what? That became a motivating force for you. It sounds like.
Definitely. My father was in the sanitation industry. My brother was in the sanitation industry. And, I had nothing but pride to be there, do what we had to do. There was nothing wrong with the profession. I loved my coworkers. I loved my bosses. And so, again, I just had to take the time to put in the work to just show people what we're made of.
어떠셨나요? 르안을 보고 한 엄마가 이렇게 얘기하잖아요. 자기 아들한테 Don't be like them. 저 사람들처럼 되지 말라고요. 사실 이런 말을 입 밖으로 내뱉는 사람이 많지는 않겠지만 엄마로서 저도 모르게 아이들한테 저런 비슷한 뉘앙스의 시선을 가르치고 있진 않았나 한번 생각해 보게 됐습니다. 평소에 야, 너 공부 열심히 안 하면 저런 힘든 일 해야 돼 라는 식의 뭔가 사람의 가치를 직업이나 겉모습으로 판단하는 시선을 저도 모르게 아이한테 심어준 적은 없는지 생각해 보게 되더라고요. 마지막 영상까지 이어서 한번 볼게요.
Tell us about being at Harvard and the day you saw one of the custodians in the hallway, and tell us what happened in that moment.
Yeah, I remember I was walking down this empty hallway and then this custodian walked towards me. And I simply just said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And she said, "Are you talking to me?" And I said, "Yes, how are you doing?" And then she said again, "Are you talking to me?" I said, "Yeah."
I mean, that makes me want to cry. Really.
know.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I'm talking to you." And she said, I'm sorry. Students don't talk to me. Students would rather look at the wall than talk to me." Direct quote. And to which I said, "That's effed up." To the degree that you want,
Yeah.
to the degree that you want, like I'll be happy to talk to you. I would love to talk to you whenever I get a chance to see you. And after that moment, it just sat with me for a long time. I just
Well,
went
that
home.
sits with me too. You know why? And I hope everybody listening, that's how you let somebody know they matter. People who are the most unseen, the people holding the doors, the doormen, the sanitation workers, the custodians, the housekeepers in a hotel. I always make sure I stop and say hello to those people, regardless of what's going on.
That makes the biggest difference in the world.
Yeah.
And so when I went home, I basically just said I want to create some type of organization just to make sure that this population gets uplifted and gets like the treatment that they deserve. And so essentially I ended up raising like $70,000 over the course of the rest of that year. And then we ended up creating the Reciprocity Effect, essentially just nonprofit that basically just wants to uplift and show love to blue collar support staff workers.
Didn't you have a party for all of them?
That's how we were able to raise the money.
So
And
you
then
had a
with that-
party for all the custodians around the school. Yeah.
Exactly.
How did you even organize that?
Well, they saw me all around the school. So when I started raising money for this event, I knew I wanted to create this big banquet for the support staff workers.
That is so cool.
So from that moment, I was pretty much, from the point I was raising the money, because we had the event in my 3L year, but I was working on it since the middle of my second year of law school.
Wow.
So from that whole point, I was raising money and also marketing for it collectively. And the way I was like really happy about it, we had over 200 people turn out, and there was like a quote from one of the custodians that like sits with me till this day. She came up to me after the event and she said, she was one of the people who got an award. And she told me, "I've never seen my son so proud of me." And till this day, like that just gives me goosebumps. And I'm just truly grateful that we had the support to pull that off.
So you're in the book Mattering, Jenny's book Mattering. When you were doing this, were you doing it because you wanted to matter or you wanted other people to know they mattered? Or was that even a part of your thinking?
You know, the way I always like thought about this question was, this is just how my dad raised me. I remember just watching my dad as I was growing up, and he just always made sure that people felt seen, people got love. He was like the neighborhood dad, just not my dad, but the neighborhood dad. And I just think as I go throughout my life, it was just my natural way of going about things. I just happened to have the resources at times to take this to another level. But
Yeah.
quite frankly, I just didn't think about it. It was just the way my dad raised me to be.
Well, I expect to see great things from you, sir.
Thank you so much.
You have such a big heart, and you're grounded in a value system that's going to take you a long way. And just reading your story and now having a chance to actually hear your voice and connect with you, you make me proud.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Jenny, for even allowing me to be a part of this book and just allowing me to be here. Thank you to both of you.
It's such an honor to be able to tell your story. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing it.
Thanks, Ruhan. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
showing us how to make other people feel like they matter. It's such a powerful story. You know, most people spend most of our waking hours at work, and there are a lot of people who you research in the workplace, and you found that many people are desperate to feel like they matter at work, and a lot of people are anxious to leave because they don't feel like they matter.
Yeah, there's a statistic, 70% of our workforce is disengaged. What is disengagement at work? When you feel like you don't matter at work, when you feel invisible or replaceable, or you have to endure rudeness and incivility, that sense of feeling like you don't matter is painful. So a coping strategy for that is actually distancing ourselves and disengaging, quiet quitting. These are the results of feeling like you don't matter. So even the least human-centered workplaces should be incentivized to lead with mattering, because what we know is that engagement leads to productivity, leads to creativity, better teamwork, higher profits. So there are ingredients to mattering. It's been studied since the 80s, and I've sort of created this acronym, SAID, to remind me of the ingredients, of the main ingredients of mattering. So what does it feel like to matter at work or in our friendships or in our families? It's to feel significant, appreciated, invested in, and depended on. So significant. It doesn't mean, needing a toast or an award at work. What struck me was how often people said when I asked them if they mattered, that it was the small things, that somebody appreciated what they said or made them feel like they were critical to the team, that we couldn't have done this without you. You're an important person here. We need you here. Appreciation.
Can you imagine how those custodians felt after that
I know.
celebration of them at Harvard? Yeah.
Well, feeling significant is feeling noticed.
Yes.
Right? When you
Yeah.
walk into a room, people
Yeah,
are making
attention.
eye contact and asking about you. Appreciation is, I like to think of it as appreciating the doer behind the deed. So if you have a colleague who's always, planning, cocktail parties after work, happy hours, instead of saying to them, thank you so much for this fun night, you could say, thank you for being such a community builder here. Because of you, our team is so much closer. I'm grateful to you. Feeling invested in is what we saw with Rahan, that it's having people in your life who are invested in your well-being, invested in your goals, and also having people in your life that you're invested in their goals and in their well-being. And then the last is feeling dependent on, knowing that you are trusted and relied on in the workplace, you are trusted to do something, and that the workplace wouldn't be the same without you there.
Yeah, I remember in Mattering, you spoke to one guy who said he didn't feel like he mattered anymore because nobody depended on him anymore.
That happens a lot in retirement.
Yeah.
That happens a lot in the late stages in aging. We think about, wealth span and health span, how healthy we'll be, how much money we'll have to retire. We need to think about our mattering span. We need to think about how will we matter to 100 and beyond. That is what we need to live this rich, meaningful life that all of us deserve.
So is that the message you want to leave our listeners with for how to matter or matter to other people?
Well, I want to leave them with the idea that if you are feeling like you don't matter, you are one action away from mattering again. And here's one challenge that I've been issuing to myself and I'll offer to you, that everyone I meet, whether they are strangers or friends or family, I picture them with a sign around their necks saying, "Tell me, do I matter?" We can all answer that question with warmth, with a smile, with kindness, with compassion instead of judgment. We are starved in this modern world. We are starved of mattering. Be a mattering agent. Be somebody that makes people feel like they matter. Boy, there's no greater calling than that.
르안 스토리 진짜 반전 아니에요? 청소일 할 때 자기한테 쏟아졌던 그 차가운 시선에 굴복하지 않고 끝끝내 하버드 로스쿨에 가죠. 근데 이 친구는 공부만 잘한 게 아니라 보이지 않는 곳에서 고생하는 분들께 존경이랑 고마움을 표현할 줄 안다는 거, 그거 자체가 진짜 멋지지 않나요? 공부를 잘하고 좋은 대학에 가고 또 시험에서 좋은 점수를 받는 거는 이제 AI가 다 도와줄 수 있는 시대가 올지도 몰라요. 하지만 르안처럼 사람의 보이지 않는 가치를 알아보고 또 다른 사람을 향해 따뜻한 인사를 건네고 그 사람을 빛나게 해주는 그런 공감 능력은 오직 인간만이 할 수 있는 능력일 겁니다. 저는 우리 아이들이 그냥 똑똑한 사람이 되는 게 아니라 보이지 않는 사람들의 가치를 알아보고 또 그분들에게 존중과 존경을 표할 줄 아는 사람으로 자랐으면 좋겠어요. 또 저 역시 아이들한테 네가 이걸 잘했으니까 또는 시험에서 좋은 점수를 받아왔으니까 그러니까 소중해. 그런 게 아니라 그냥 너 자체로도 온전히 빛나고 소중한 존재야 라는 말을 자주 해줘야겠다 싶었어요. 여러분은 언제 쓸모 있음을 느끼시나요? 또 누구에게 이 매터링의 가치를 전하실 건가요? 지금까지 하트풀 스푼이었습니다. 오늘 영상이 좋으셨다면 좋아요와 구독 부탁드리고요. 여러분의 생각도 댓글로 많이 남겨주세요. 감사합니다.